With just over a month to go before the US election, this week on McBLOG we've been having a special focus with the influence that the President and Vice President can have on the direction of our culture and the values that we hold as a society. Even here in New Zealand, we need to know just who the candidates are, their values and what direction they will indirectly lead the world in. Where do they stand on the issues that matter to us? Life, marriage, family, religious freedom. What's their agenda in the area of identity politics, LGBTQ+, gender ideology, critical theory, environmental alarmism, drugs, abortion, euthanasia, social engineering, and many others. This week, we've been replaying our previous examinations, our previous McBLOG episodes of each of the candidates. Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on one side, former President Donald Trump and JD Vance on the other side. Previously, we've done the vice presidential candidates, Tim Walz and JD Vance. Today, we focus on Democrat presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. So a bit of background first. She was born on 20th of October 1964, so she'll turn 60 in October. According to her profile on Wikipedia, she's the daughter of immigrants from Oakland, California. Her mother was a scientist who emigrated from India to study at UC Berkeley. Her father was from Jamaica and became a prominent economist at Stanford. In elementary school, she was bused from her predominantly black neighbourhood to a white one, which was part of an effort to desegregate local public schools. She lived in California till she was 12, then she moved with her mother and sister to Canada and attended Howard University, a historically black college in Washington, D.C., where she studied political science and economics and went to law school. Now, San Francisco is where her political career began. In 2003, she was elected the city's district attorney, and her legal career included the following roles. A deputy district attorney. She started her legal career in San Francisco. As I said, in this role, she gained a reputation for her tough stance on crime. Then she became the San Francisco district attorney. She was elected as the district attorney in 2003, the first female to hold the position. And during her tenure, she focused on reforms, including good initiatives to reduce recidivism and improve the handling of sexual assault cases. Then she was elected Attorney General of California in 2010, and this is where she gained national attention for her leadership on major legal battles such as those against the Trump administration's policies on immigration and healthcare. And then she was elected to the US Senate in 2016, representing California. And in the Senate, she served on several committees, including Judiciary and Homeland Security. She was known for her advocacy on issues such as criminal justice reform, healthcare, also known as abortion rights, and climate change, also known as climate alarmism. And as we know, in 2021, she was sworn into office as the first female of African American, South Asian descent American vice president. Firstly, according to CNN, Vice President Kamala Harris supported the Defund the Police movement in 2020. During a radio interview amid protests for police reform, she stated the movement rightly criticised police spending and argued that more police do not guarantee public safety. More police don't guarantee safety. Harris called for the demilitarisation of police departments, challenging the idea that increased police presence leads to greater safety. She made her comments, of course, just weeks after the murder of George Floyd by the Minneapolis police officer, which galvanized the defund movement. Have a watch of her comments.
And also I'll mention, and part of what we have to do here is also look at the militarization of police departments and the kind of money that is going to that. And we need to demilitarize police departments. So there's a lot in this conversation, but at its core, one of the issues that I think we should all agree on is that it is old thinking, it is outdated, and is actually wrong and backward to think that more police officers will create more safety.
Well, after Harris was selected as Biden's running mate in August 2020, the Biden campaign tried to make it clear she opposed defunding the police and she supported increased funding. Kamala has some values, and if you don't like them, she has some others. In terms of Black Lives Matter, during her 2020 campaign for president, which lasted for less than 11 months, because she didn't get a single vote, Harris promoted the bail fund to help bail Black Lives Matter rioters who were destroying cities and businesses, including those owned by blacks. And she was bailing them out of jail. But only a fraction of the more than $41 million raised actually went to freeing rioters. A repeat offender was sent free, and he then went on to murder a man on a train platform, shooting him in cold blood. Now, Kamala Harris tweeted, "If you're able to, chip in now to the Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota." Now, interestingly, that tweet is now gone. But the legacy media are trying to make out that no, she never gave money to it. Lying Trump. No, she didn't give money. She just promoted it over her significant social media. And not just on Twitter with her 20 million followers, as they try to make out, also on Facebook with her 5 million followers. Now, according to a study, up to 95% of the 2020 riots were linked to Black Lives Matter activism. Some of the protests involved rioting, looting, and violence, including 47 fatalities, and cost $1.2 billion. But Kamala wanted to help bail out the offenders. Now, on the issue of same-sex marriage, Kamala Harris refused to defend California's ban on same-sex marriage, despite a democratically held referendum which Californians voted in the majority to define marriage as one man, one woman. Yes, a democratic process, but she didn't defend it. It's unconstitutional because she disagrees with it. Have a watch.
I think the future is of Prop 8.
Well, first of all, I think that Prop 8 is, as the court has declared, unconstitutional. And, you know, when we've been talking about just the history of the Bay Area, I am a daughter of parents who met when they were active in the civil rights movement. And the idea that we still in 2012 have a group of people who are second-class citizens who do not have rights equal to others is ridiculous. It really is. I mean, just think about it conceptually. It's just wrong. And I think California has made the right decision. The Ninth Circuit made the right decision in terms of what's going to happen here, which is that it's unconstitutional. And I hope the United States Supreme Court does the right thing.
California has made the right decision. Oh, not the people, the court. And it's fascinating that she loves the Supreme Court here when they make the decisions she likes. Who's a danger to democracy again? So she refused to defend a democratic referendum result. Now, on the issue of abortion, Kamala appears to be the most pro-abortion presidential candidate in American history. Throughout her career, Harris has been a strong activist and promoter of abortion. She went on after Brett Kavanaugh on abortion rights in his confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court.
Are there any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm happy to answer a more specific question. But
Male versus female?
there are medical procedures.
Okay. That the government has the power to make a decision about a man's body?
I thought you were asking about medical procedures that are unique to men.
I'll repeat the question. Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
She's so smug, but she fails to acknowledge that the reason the state is interested in a woman's pregnancy and not the use of, for example, contraception, is because there's another person involved, the unborn child. Men don't have a midwife to help them decide on a vasectomy. Men are not told to avoid seafood and alcohol while their stomachs are bloated. But Harris has consistently supported Roe v. Wade, the landmark Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion nationwide. In During her time as California Attorney General, she worked on policies to promote abortion. During her stint as the Attorney General, she sponsored the ill-named FACT Act, F-A-C-T, which would have forced crisis pregnancy centres to advertise for abortion facilities. She voted against a bill that would ban abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. And as a US Senator, she championed various bills to push abortion. She wants to restrict the ability of states to protect unborn life. In the Senate, she introduced the Do No Harm Act, ironically named, which would have terminated the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1983. In other words, conscientious protection for doctors and healthcare workers, forcing them to commit abortions and carry out gender transition surgeries. And in her role as Vice President, Harris continues to promote abortion. When the awesome news of Roe v. Wade being overturned was announced in 2022, Kamala was almost weeping. She said losing the right to kill the unborn child was a health care crisis.
Without access to the same health care or reproductive health care that their mothers and grandmothers had for 50 years. This is the first time in the history of our nation that a constitutional right has been taken from the people of America. And what is that right? Some might ask. It's the right to privacy. Think about it as the right for each person to make intimate decisions about heart and home.
Not the heart of the unborn child. Intimate decisions about heart. I don't think she sees the irony of what she's saying. In March this year, she was the first vice president to visit an abortion centre, calling it healthcare and true leadership. Nothing says leadership like killing the unborn child.
This healthcare clinic to uplift the work that is happening in Minnesota as an example of what true leadership looks like, which is to understand it is only right and fair that people have access to the health care they need and that they have access.
Healthcare. This is Kamala speaking just at the end of last month.
Because we trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do. And when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law.
The problem is she won't name a single abortion limit. She wants it right to birth. Now, just watch this clip. She could say, no, I don't agree with late-term abortions, but she's asked a simple question. What week of pregnancy should it be cut off? What limit? Have a watch.
What is it that you believe? I mean, what week of pregnancy should abortion access be cut off?
We need to restore the protections of Roe versus Wade. We're not trying to do something new.
Well, that was nebulous because it was about viability, which could be anywhere between 20 to 24 weeks. And
so no. Let me be very clear.
The Women's Health Protection Act that the White House also endorsed. Let me be very clear.
From day one, the president has been clear. I have been clear. We need to put back the protections that are in Roe v. Wade into law. Since the Supreme Court took it, Congress has the power and ability to pass legislation to put those protections back in law, and Joe Biden will sign that bill. So that is what we want.
But does it need to be specific in terms of defining and where that guarantee goes up to and where it does not? At which week of pregnancy?
We need to put back in place the protections of Roe versus Wade.
You know why I'm asking you this question, though, because
we're not trying to do anything that did not exist before June.
She just won't answer the question. Now, data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show that more than 4,000 abortions beyond 21 weeks occurred in the US in 1 year, with evidence of clinics offering elective abortions up to 34 weeks. Not medically necessary for the life of the child or the mother, but elective abortions. And yet, Harris routinely dodges the issue. And she's even encouraged Christians to violate the demands God places on their consciences and support abortion anyway. Pastor Kamala says that Christians can have abortions. You don't need to abandon your faith. No, you only have to ignore the biblical teaching and imperative regarding the sanctity of life.
We must also take steps to protect other fundamental freedoms, including the freedom for a woman to make decisions about her own body. And you know, on this subject, it's important to note that to support a woman's ability, not her government, but her, to make that decision does not require anyone to abandon their faith or their beliefs. It just requires us to agree the government shouldn't be making that decision for her.
Oh, thank you, Pastor. And she's been convening with faith leaders. And she talks about those of us with faith. Now, I'm not sure what her faith is in. And I bet those faith leaders are from very liberal churches.
I've convened faith leaders. And, you know, for those of us of faith, I think that we agree, many of us, that there's nothing about this issue that will require anyone to abandon their faith or change their faith. It's simply saying that the government should not have the ability to decide what an individual does with her own body.
Yeah, now, as Life News reports, when then President Donald Trump nominated pro-life Catholic Brian Boucher to serve as a federal judge, Harris castigated him for his membership in a fraternal organisation, the Knights of Columbus. And Harris asked Boucher if he knew that the Knights had taken extreme positions on life and marriage. Now, extreme means beliefs held by the Catholic Church itself. One of the more disturbing parts of Kamala Harris's legacy is that she has weaponized the law to silence her political opponents. This is one of the more disturbing parts. According to a summary in the Daily Signal, David Daleiden and the Centre for Medical Progress released a slew of undercover sting videos showing Planned Parenthood staff, that's like family planning in New Zealand, admitting to selling aborted babies' body parts for profit in 2014. Now, Kamala Harris, who received funding from Planned Parenthood during her 2016 Senate campaign, didn't go after Planned Parenthood. No, she directed her office to search David Daleiden's home, seizing his video footage and preparing a legal case against him. And her successor as California Attorney General, who's now the Secretary of Health and Human Services, filed 15 charges against Daleiden and his centre in 2017. Planned Parenthood sued for damages. They accused Daleiden of conspiracy, eavesdropping and other claims, in other words, exposing the truth. And unbelievably, a judge awarded $2.4 million in damages and more than $13 million in attorney's fees against David Daleiden. The US Supreme Court rejected Daleiden's appeal. Oh, they like the Supreme Court now, don't they? I didn't hear Biden criticising that decision, did you? Now, in May 2020, Daleiden sued both Harris and the Attorney General that came on after Harris, claiming that Harris conspired with Planned Parenthood to violate his civil rights by prosecuting him for the undercover investigation. Have a watch of just this little clip of footage which Kamala Harris refused to release because she doesn't like it. But after 8 years, it's just been released.
You do? Yeah. Okay. And we could pay you $1,000 up to $1,500 for a liver.
Yeah. I think financial incentive from you guys is going to be like to the people we have to get the Supreme Court being very happy about it.
Shocking. You can watch the whole clip. The link is in the text of this McBLOG. You know, the legacy media should be all over this case because it means that all their own undercover reporting could result in this outcome. You know, massive payouts. But they're not. They've been silent. Why? Because it involves abortion. And the media love abortion, including here in New Zealand, as our research shows. Now, Harris also targeted conservative groups Americans for Prosperity and American Freedom Law Centre. Her office demanded that those groups turn over their IRS tax forms, which include donor information. Both groups refused to hand over the forms because they were concerned about donor anonymity. Kamala Harris's office threatened to suspend their non-profit registrations, deregister them, and fine their leaders. But the Supreme Court ultimately upheld their rights to protect donor anonymity in a 2021 ruling. Wow, does that sound familiar? Did you hear about a conservative charity in New Zealand being deregistered because of their views? And in 2018, Harris condemned many Trump judicial nominees for extreme views. What are those extreme views? Well,
for instance, we have had a nominee who argued that a judge's impartiality should be questioned because the judge is in a committed same-sex relationship. We have had another nominee who has repeatedly asserted that full marriage equality, quote, imperils civic peace. That nominee is now a confirmed judge with a lifetime appointment. We have had yet another nominee who expressed support for the county clerk in Kentucky who defied a federal court order by refusing to issue marriage licenses to gay couples after Obergefell decision. These are just a few of the nominees who have openly expressed hostility to the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, opposing the LGBT agenda, supporting traditional marriage, supporting conscientious objection. I don't think she'd score too well on our value your vote. Harris voted 100% in favour of bills supported by Planned Parenthood. She voted 4% in favour of bills supported by the conservative Heritage Action for America. Now, lying, I have as the title here. US Vice President Kamala Harris has more recently attacked a policy platform called Project 2025, produced by the Heritage Foundation, which contains very good conservative policies to strengthen marriage and family and communities. Have a watch.
We have seen their agenda. Part of it is called Project 2025. Now, can you believe they put that in writing? 900 pages of it.
I bet you read it.
Project 2025, a plan to return America to a dark past.
Ooh.
They intend to cut Medicare, to repeal our $35 cap on insulin, to eliminate the Department of Education, to end programs like Head Start, which would take away preschool for hundreds of thousands of children in our communities. Let's be clear. This represents an outright attack on our children, our families, and our future. These extremists want to take us back, but we are not going back.
Oh, these extremists. The only problem with this speech is that she lied. Her campaign admitted it. A Harris campaign official said the campaign has made a deliberate decision to brand all of Trump's policies as Project 2025 since they believe it is stuck with voters. Even her supportive newspapers had to admit that she had lied. And here's another lie. But hey, if you listen to the New Zealand media, only Trump lies. On the border, border czar AWOL is the heading. The Biden administration, with Harris as a key figure, have been a disaster on the border issue, with surges in illegal migrant numbers, putting families at risk as well. Back in 2021, Biden appointed Harris to be the border czar, in charge of the border. Kamala thanked Biden and accepted the role of being put in charge of the southern border.
There are now 16,000 migrant children in U.S. custody at the southern border, approaching a record number.
So this new surge we're dealing with now started with the last administration, but it's our responsibility to deal with it humanely and to stop what's happening. And so this increase has been consequential.
President Biden today announcing Vice President Harris will lead his administration's efforts to stem migration from Central America.
There are many factors that lead President to leave these countries. And while we are clear that people should not come to the border now, we also understand that we will enforce the law.
This is the first...
Oh, okay. So she is in charge. But it got a lot worse over the last 3 years. Illegal crossings at a record high. I mean, remember the children in cages? The accusation against Trump? It's gotten worse, way worse. At the end of last year, data by the House Judiciary Committee revealed that almost 4 million illegal aliens had either been released into the United States or had successfully evaded the Border Patrol to enter the country since Biden took office. Even some of Kamala's own party, the Democrats, say it's a disaster. This is the end of last year.
Tonight, Denver joining the growing list of cities struggling to handle a record surge of migrants, with entire blocks full of migrants sleeping on the street.
Oh, it is a crisis.
Mike Johnston is one of 5 Democratic mayors recently writing President Biden, saying action is needed to help cities address the crisis.
What's the one thing you want from the Biden administration right now?
When you admit someone for asylum into the country, they should get work authorization. We should expedite the process of approving that application so it doesn't take 4 years. It could take 30 days.
Johnston is under increasing pressure from counties outside of Denver that are not taking in migrants. Suburban Douglas County passing a resolution demanding Denver drop its status as a sanctuary city, a jurisdiction where officials won't enforce federal immigration laws. Critics say that attracts more migrants, with illegal crossings at the southern border this year at record highs.
What would you like to see the city do?
You know, one thing a politician should always do is turn up to areas where significant issues are happening, especially when you're responsible for it. I mean, John Key turned up to Christchurch after the earthquake. Jacinda Ardern went to Christchurch straight after the tragedy of the mosque shootings. You will have seen Simeon Brown, the Transport Minister, turn up to the Brynderwyns when they were having to keep being closed. But Kamala hasn't visited the border. But, hey, she also hasn't been to Europe.
Any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't know.
Now, the interesting thing is that since she has become the presidential nominee, the legacy media have suddenly got amnesia. Nope, she's not the border czar.
Border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris?
Yeah, and it goes on. I mean, how convenient. The mainstream media are certainly campaigning for Kamala. And on LGBTQ plus rights. In a recent report by Time magazine, it said Harris is a staunch supporter of LGBTQ plus rights, having spoken out against Florida's Don't Say Gay law. Of course, it had nothing to do with Don't Say Gay. It was to stop sexuality and gender indoctrination of young children. Another lie. As Vice President, she's hosted Pride Month receptions, and in 2023, she visited the famed Stonewall Inn in New York to pledge support for the local LGBTQ plus community. The Biden-Harris administration's Health and Human Services Department unequivocally supports radical treatments for transgender youth, including puberty blockers, hormone blockers in early adolescence, and non-reversible gender reassignment surgeries in adolescence. Now, speech making. Just as Biden had critics on his stumbling and stirring speech, especially when reading from the teleprompter, and at the recent debate, Kamala has had her critics for her word salads and repeated phrases. Have a listen to this little explanation on when she's asked about inflation.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending and your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up. And families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously.
Great economics lesson there. In fairness, she did go on and suggest some solutions, but that was interesting to watch. And we've also got this tremendously deep speech as she championed abortion. Reproductive freedom to kill the child in the womb.
Very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
If it wasn't such a sick subject that she was promoting, abortion, it is really amusing. She has some key words which are important to her. Can you figure them out?
What can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know? What can be unburdened by what has been? 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 What we can see.
Okay, I'll stop there. It actually goes on for 4 minutes. The bottom line is it's pretty clear that Kamala's campaign is going to involve abortion, abortion, abortion. Have a watch of her very first ad of the 2024 election. Pride flags waving, Trump mugshot featured, of course, and abortion, abortion, abortion. The freedom to abort your child. She talks about future for the children not living in poverty at the same time. I mean, the cognitive dissonance is stunning.
In this election, we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? There are some people who think we should be a country of chaos, of fear, of hate. But us, we choose something different. We choose freedom. The freedom not just to get by, but get ahead. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to make decisions about your own body. We choose a future where no child lives in poverty, where we can all afford health care, where no one is above the law. We believe in the promise of America, and we're ready to fight for it. Because when we fight, we win. So join us. Go to KamalaHarris.com and let's get to work.
Oh, yes. Nobody is above the law. Oh, except Planned Parenthood and harvesting baby parts, of course. And just finally, drag queens. They want you to vote for Kamala.
Program to bring you a message from an extra special Drag Race viewing party.
Hi, everyone. It's Kamala Harris. Each day, we are seeing our rights and freedoms under attack, including the right of everyone to be who they are, love who they love, openly and with pride. So as we fight back against these attacks, let's all remember, no one is alone. We are all in this together, and your vote is your power. So please make sure your voice is heard this November and register to vote at vote.gov.
Can I get an amen?
Amen! Now on with the show.
And remember, you better vote.
Oh yeah, that's RuPaul's drag show. You know what? Many people may say, how can someone vote for Donald Trump? Maybe a good question, until you read the legacy and the agenda of Kamala Harris. And then suddenly, Trump actually has some very positive policies. And in a binary decision such as Harris or Trump, it may involve holding your nose and voting for the person likely to do the least damage and possibly do some good as well.